had an affair who hated traditional roles too, but now I lost my husband and lost love for my affair. Hey Reddit, did you ever imagine traditional roles could cause cheating and a separation? Well, that happened to me and I need to get it off my chest. I'm not looking for sympathy or forgiveness. I know what I did was wrong, and I'm trying to make sense of it all. Maybe writing it down will help me understand how I ended up here. So, here it goes. I'm Gabby, a 32-year-old woman who thought she had everything figured out. I've been married to Derek for the last 8 years. We met in college, and it felt like we were destined to be together. Derek was my rock, my best friend, and the person I thought I'd spend the rest of my life with. We were both ambitious and shared dreams of building successful careers, traveling the world, and maybe one day having kids. I remember the first time I saw Derek. It was the beginning of sophomore year, and I was struggling to find my way around the sprawling campus. I had just transferred from a smaller college, and everything seemed overwhelming. One afternoon, while trying to navigate my way to an economics lecture, I bumped into Derek, literally. I dropped all my books, and he helped me gather them. He had this easy smile and a calm demeanor that immediately put me at ease. We ended up walking to class together, chatting about our majors, our interests, and our favorite movies. By the time we reached the lecture hall, it felt like I had known him for years. From that day on, we were inseparable. We would study together in the library, grabbing coffee during breaks, and eventually, our friendship blossomed into something more. Our first date was a simple picnic in the park, but it was perfect. We talked for hours, lying on a blanket under the stars, sharing our dreams and fears. Derek told me about his plans to become a successful architect, and I shared my aspirations of becoming a journalist. It felt like we were two pieces of a puzzle that fit perfectly together. Life had a funny way of changing our plans. After college, Derek landed a fantastic job offer in a new city. It was an opportunity we couldn't pass up, so we packed our bags and moved. Our new life was exciting at first. We got a beautiful apartment, met new friends, and enjoyed exploring our new city. But soon, the excitement started to fade, replaced by the demands of our everyday lives. Derek's job was incredibly demanding. He worked long hours and was often too tired to do much when he got home. I was working full-time too, but I found myself taking on the bulk of the household responsibilities. I was cooking, cleaning, doing laundry, and managing our social calendar. It wasn't like Derek didn't want to help, but his job left him drained. I understood it, but it didn't make things any easier. Our relationship began to change. The late-night conversations that once brought us so close were replaced by discussions about bills, chores, and work. Our spontaneous weekend getaways became rare, and our intimate moments felt like they were happening out of obligation rather than desire. I started feeling more like a roommate than a wife. I missed the connection we once had, the feeling of being truly seen and understood. Our new city was a bustling metropolis, full of life and energy. Initially, we spent weekends exploring every corner, visiting museums, trying out new restaurants, and making new friends. I remember our first night in the city. We had dinner at a cozy little bistro downtown. The food was amazing, and we laughed and talked like we always did. For a while, it felt like we were on an extended vacation. But as Derek's job became more demanding, those carefree days became fewer and farther between. He started coming home later and later, often bringing work with him. I remember nights when he would stumble into bed well past midnight, exhausted and barely able to keep his eyes open. I would lie awake, staring at the ceiling, wondering when our lives had become so different from what we had envisioned. I took on more and more of the household duties, trying to keep everything running smoothly. I would wake up early to make Derek's breakfast and pack his lunch, clean the apartment, do the grocery shopping, and still manage to put in a full day at my own job. By the time Derek got home, dinner would be ready, and I would be there with a smile, hiding my own exhaustion and frustration. I didn't want to add to his stress, but it was taking a toll on me. The weekends, which used to be our time to reconnect, became just another extension of the work week. Derek would spend most of his time catching up on rest or finishing up projects he couldn't get to during the week. I found myself alone more often than not, trying to fill the void with hobbies and outings with friends. But nothing could replace the closeness I craved with Derek. We started arguing more frequently. Little things that never used to bother us suddenly became sources of tension. A misplaced item, a forgotten errand, a missed call, they all became triggers for bigger fights. I felt like we were drifting apart, and the more I tried to hold on, the more distant Derek became. It wasn't that Derek didn't care. He did. He would occasionally bring home flowers or suggest we go out for dinner to make up for lost time. But those gestures, while sweet, felt like band-aids on a much deeper wound. The connection we once had seemed to be slipping through our fingers, and neither of us knew how to stop it. One evening, after another argument about something trivial, I found myself walking through the city streets trying to clear my head. I wandered aimlessly, ending up at a little cafe we used to frequent. I sat there for hours, sipping coffee and replaying our relationship in my mind. How had we gone from being so in sync to feeling like strangers? In those moments of solitude, I started to question everything. Was this what marriage was supposed to be? A constant struggle to maintain a semblance of the love we once shared? I missed the days when we could talk about anything and everything, when just being together was enough. I felt a profound sense of loss, like the person I fell in love with was slipping away, and there was nothing I could do to stop it. Our friends and family didn't seem to notice the cracks forming in our relationship. To them, we were the perfect couple, successful, happy, and living a dream life in a new city. I didn't have the heart to tell them the truth. It was easier to maintain the show going than to admit that our marriage was falling down, piece by piece. At work, I put on a brave face, throwing myself into projects and tasks to keep my mind off the chaos at home. My colleagues saw me as dependable and strong, unaware of the emotional screw-up I was beneath the surface. I became adept at compartmentalizing, separating my professional life from my personal struggles. But the weight of it all was becoming unbearable. Derek and I were like ships passing in the night, living parallel lives that rarely intersected in a meaningful way. The love and laughter that once defined our relationship had been replaced by a sense of duty and routine. We were both trapped in a cycle of expectations and responsibilities, unable to find our way back to each other. Looking back, I can see the warning signs were there all along. The subtle changes in our conversations, the growing distance between us, the way our dreams seemed to take a back seat to the demands of daily life. But in the midst of it all, I was too caught up in trying to make everything work to see what was really happening. And so, here I am, pouring my heart out to strangers on the internet, trying to make sense of how we got here. Maybe in sharing my story, I can find some clarity. Maybe I can figure out how to fix what's broken. Or maybe I just need to accept that some things can't be fixed. All I know is that I miss the way things used to be, and I don't know how to get back there. While I watched my marriage's downfall, I met Sam. My best friend who worked with me got promoted, and we all headed to a bar after work. Sam was childhood friends with her. I remember feeling an immediate connection. Sam was charismatic, funny, and seemed to understand exactly what I was going through. He was in a relationship too, and we bonded over our shared frustrations with the traditional roles we found ourselves in. Sam's wife was born in a very conservative and traditional household. She was also very religious. He said that when they met, she was pretty much an atheist and didn't really care about what her family thought of her. That's why he fell in love. For some reason, with time, she got deeper and deeper into her family's religion. They demanded her to get married and start a family, because that was her role as a woman. Sam said it was like they replaced his girlfriend. She couldn't stop talking about their unborn kids, their baptism, and how she wouldn't let them miss a weekend of church. Thing is, Sam doesn't want kids, never did, and he told her that many times. Another thing is that for her religion, using birth control is a sin, because a family is supposed to reproduce as much as God wishes them to. They weren't big supporters of unholy sex, which apparently would be any sexual practice without the intention to have the children of God. During most of the relationship, his wife was on birth control, but stopped after her family got suspicious. Now, all that she wants is to get pregnant with Sam's baby, one that he terribly doesn't want. Yep. He told me all of his relationship problems that day at the bar. I also told him all about Derek and our relationship. It was fun finding someone who also had love problems. It seemed like I was the only one in the world with marriage problems. We started texting and talking regularly, and those conversations became a lifeline for me. With Sam, I felt alive again. We were developing a great friendship. I didn't have any intention of flirting with him because I was faithful to my marriage vows and thought Sam was too. One night, I had a particularly bad argument with Derek about his long hours and my feeling neglected. I got home from work and realized he seemed angry. He was mad because I wasn't cooking for him in the morning and wasn't making dinner either. It went kind of like this. "Gabby, what is happening? I starved during the whole week and even had to eat at some shitty place near work because you've been waking up late and getting home after dinner. How am I supposed to live like this?" Derek said that to me with the most natural tone of voice. Sat down at the couch, holding a glass of bourbon. I wanted to pick up that glass and smash it on his head, but instead I answered, "There's food in the fridge and everywhere in the kitchen. Make it yourself. You're a grown man and I'm not your mommy." "I work all day and I have to come to my own house and cook? What kind of man does that?" Derek said, to which I answered, "I do that because I also have a full-time job. Ever since we got to this damn city, I have been cooking and cleaning for you like a little bitch. If you were grateful for it, I might even keep doing it, but you act as if that was my obligation. I'm not your mom and I don't even have your kids to be doing all this house labor like a housewife. I wished I married someone like my mom. At least I wouldn't be starving right now." He said the perfect thing for me to answer with the thought that comes to my mind every time I'm doing the chores he neglects. "Well, Derek, then you should probably pick up your things, go to your mother's house, eat her food, and make love to her after, since you dream about it so much. You annoy me, so I'm leaving and we'll get back tomorrow. Have fun at dinner." I didn't give him time to answer and just slammed our apartment door on my way out. I texted Sam right after I got into the elevator. We met up for coffee, which turned into dinner. I found myself pouring my heart out to Sam. He listened, really listened, in a way I hadn't felt in a long time. He distracted me and I wasn't even thinking about Derek anymore. Our friendship started innocently, but the attraction between us was undeniable. We stopped at a liquor shop, not to buy alcohol, but something we missed and couldn't have anymore because of our spouses. Cigarettes. I stopped smoking after I met Derek. He didn't like the smell, and it was past the time for me to quit. At least he caused something good for my health. I was always grateful for it, even having a secret desire for smoking sometimes. Nope. We stood in front of the car in the empty parking lot, smoking and talking. We got so involved that at a certain point I turned and smiled at Sam. He didn't even hesitate and kissed me. I felt butterflies. It was amazing. We spent a few minutes making out, not being able to get away from each other. I pulled him to get inside my car. We got in the back seat, and what happened next, you probably already know. I knew what I was doing was wrong, but I couldn't help myself. Sam made me feel like the woman I used to be, vibrant, desired, and free. The affair escalated quickly, and the guilt was immediate and overwhelming, but so was the rush of emotions. I felt trapped in my own life, and Sam was my escape. I convinced myself that this was what I needed to be happy, to feel something again. When I came home the next day, Derek apologized and realized he was only thinking about himself, and he didn't realize how burned out I was trying to juggle between work and house chores. He dressed himself up and took me out to dinner. For him, things were fine, but I couldn't stop thinking about Sam. As a way for us to end our war and get over our fight, Derek suggested we hired a maid. I brought up that subject many times during our relationship, but he always said it was unnecessary, since it was just the two of us, coming from someone who never did chores in the house. I felt happier with a maid in our house, and especially at my occasional encounters with Sam. We couldn't see each other all the time because of our spouses, but we always found a special time for us. Back at home, Derek and I continued to drift apart. He knew something was off, but he trusted me and didn't press too hard. I became an expert at hiding my tracks, making excuses, and living a double life. The guilt bothered me. It wasn't killing me or anything, but it was there. The fear of losing the excitement I found in Sam kept me going. I felt like I was spiraling, unable to stop myself from making decisions I knew would lead to disaster. Sam and I shared a lot of similarities in our dissatisfaction with our lives. He hated the traditional roles just as much as I did. We would talk for hours about our dreams, our frustrations, and what we wanted from life. He made me feel like I wasn't alone in my feelings, and that was intoxicating. We had this connection that I thought was missing in my marriage, but deep down, I knew it wasn't sustainable. On a random weekend after a few months of affair, Sam's wife traveled to visit her family. Sam pretty much got on his knees begging for her not to take him with her. She was hesitant, but he promised he'd agree to try for a baby with her once she came back. Sam started avoiding doing the deed with his wife because it felt like an animal's insemination. She only wanted to do what would get her knocked up, which was a bad side. But the worst for Sam was having to get her pregnant, since he didn't want kids. He avoided it as much as he could, but between seeing her crazy conservative and traditional family and promising something he could figure out how to escape, it was better to stay home and tell her he'd do it and not complain. I told Derek I had to work late, which wasn't really a problem since he responded to my text with a selfie of him at the office saying, "Me too," and a sad face. I went to Sam's apartment and we spent all night on the most romantic date ever. I remember it was around 9 o'clock, 1 hour left for me to go home without being suspicious. Sam and I were in his guest bedroom because his room had a lot of pictures and religious symbols. It was already weird for him to do it with his wife there. Imagine with another woman. We were laying on the bed, talking after great long hours of pleasure. Sam put his hand on my face and gently pressed his fingers on my skin. I felt chills. It was the most intimate touch we ever had. God, Gabby. I wish I had met you before. I could easily propose to you right now, if I even could. I laughed to hide my sadness. I would easily marry you if I didn't have to cook and wash your underwear. He laughed back and said, I do my own laundry. My wife doesn't even touch my underwear, whether I'm wearing them or not. She is very lucky to have you then. I whispered and kissed his lips softly. He smiled and then answered me. Actually, I'm lucky to have you. You're so beautiful and perfect. That jerk doesn't deserve you. Yeah, well, I thought he did for many years until we moved here and our connection just disappeared. It's what you said about the moment in a relationship when something breaks and everything gets ruined. I sighed, reflecting about everything I had been doing for the last few months. The moment for me was my amazing girlfriend accepting the religion she denied her whole life just for peace with her family, and yours was your boyfriend getting promoted and transporting himself to the 50 ES. Are we horrible people? Sam asked me jokingly. We are cheating on them, so yes. It seemed like I was more guilty about it than Sam. I feel horrible holding myself from saying how much I love you, because I know we can't leave the situation we're in, and that just makes things worse. But I love you, Gabby. I was deeply depressed with everything that was going on in my life. You made me happy when I needed the most. What Sam said caused a tear to go down my face. I knew some part of me was still attached to Derek. That's why I couldn't say I love you back to Sam. But the biggest pain in my heart was knowing Sam would never be mine, and I'd never be his. A few days later, something felt off. Derek had lingering glances, hesitant questions about my whereabouts. One evening, he came home earlier than usual, and I could feel the tension in the air. Gabby, can we talk? He asked, his voice unusually calm. I nodded, trying to keep my composure as we sat down on the couch. Are you happy with us? He started. I was caught off guard by the directness of his question. Of course, Derek. Why do you ask? He sighed, running his fingers through his hair. I've noticed you've been different lately. Distant. I just want to know if there's something going on. I hesitated, my heart racing. It's just work, Derek. I'm stressed, that's all. He looked at me, his eyes searching mine for a sign of the truth. Are you sure it's just work? Yes, I'm sure. I couldn't look him in the eye. I know about you and Sam, he said quietly, his words slicing through the air like a knife. I felt my heart drop, my breath catching in my throat. What are you talking about? Derek reached into his pocket, pulling out his phone. He showed me a series of photos, Sam and I together, kissing, holding hands. My world crumbled around me as I realized he had been tracking my every move. How did you... I stammered, but he cut me off. I hired a private investigator, he said, his voice cold. I needed to know the truth. The day we had lunch together at the mall, I met you there because we were both working. You sent me your location so I could find you, but you forgot to turn it off. You went to some apartment building during your work hours. All I could think was, what is she doing there? That's why I hired someone. I was silent. It felt like I was physically unable to speak. He stared at me looking for a reaction, but I just stared at him back, completely lost. You betrayed me, Gabby, he shouted, pacing the living room. After everything we've been through, this is how you repay me? I'm sorry, Derek. I didn't mean for it to happen. Sorry doesn't cut it, he snapped, his face twisted in anger. You destroyed our marriage. You destroyed us. I tried to explain, to make him understand, but he was beyond listening. The fight escalated, with Derek throwing my infidelity in my face at every turn. I felt my guilt and shame crushing me. Finally, he stopped, a cold, calculating look in his eyes. You know what? I'm not going to let you get away with this. What do you mean? I asked, dread pooling in my stomach. He smiled, a cruel twist to his lips. You'll see. He left our apartment. I felt horrible, but still texted Sam to let him know of what happened. I thought Derek could go after him, so I had to let him know. It had been some days since the last time we saw each other, and we also didn't talk during that period. I texted explaining what happened. For 5 minutes, I watched the symbol telling me that Sam was typing. Then a huge text showed up in my screen, which said, Hello, my love. This will be the hardest thing I have ever done in my life. I'm sorry. My wife tested positive. She's pregnant. We tried a few weeks before she traveled. A day I don't even remember because I had to get really drunk to actually do it. At least she didn't make me do it again, like I had promised her. Even though all this is against my will, I have to own up to my actions. After you left my house on Friday, I could only think about leaving her and finally be able to be happy with you, even if I had to convince you to leave your husband. When she got home and told me, I cried my eyes off, not out of happiness, but because I knew I'd lose you. I'm sorry, my beautiful Gabby. We can't see each other anymore. I grew up with an irresponsible dad who didn't care about me. That's why I never wanted to have kids. But now it's done, and I'd rather jump off a bridge than be like my father. I have to be here with my family, without secrets and affairs, which would eventually come out and ruin my family. I love you, Gabby. Derek is still not good for you. I hope you have a good life. I'll try not to be miserable in mine. Goodbye. I couldn't stop crying. I kept reading the text again and again, hoping his words would change. With a snap of a finger, my life was officially broken and ruined. That's what happens when you put lies into yours and others' lives. They come out. They always do. Update. The next few days after Derek found out were a nightmare. Derek moved out, but not before making sure everyone knew about my betrayal. Our friends, our family, even my coworkers were informed. The humiliation was unbearable. Derek's revenge didn't stop there. He drained our joint bank account, leaving me with nothing. I was forced to take out loans to cover basic expenses. The financial strain, combined with the emotional fallout, was devastating. In the end, Derek got his revenge. I lost everything, my marriage, my stability, and the life I thought I had. As I sit here writing this, I realize that my actions have led to this point. I don't expect sympathy or forgiveness. I just needed to get it off my chest. The affair gave me a temporary sense of freedom and excitement, but it was a band-aid on a much deeper issue. My relationship with Derek was deteriorating, and I wasn't doing anything to fix it. Instead, I was running away, hiding in the arms of someone who couldn't possibly offer me the stability and love that Derek did. Looking back, I can see how foolish I was. I let my dissatisfaction and restlessness drive me to make choices that would ultimately destroy the life I had built with Derek. I betrayed the person who loved me the most for a fleeting feeling of excitement. Now, I'm sitting here, trying to understand why I did what I did and how I can pick up the pieces of my shattered life. I know I have a long road ahead of me, filled with difficult conversations and painful realizations. I'm not sure if I'll ever be able to make amends for the hurt I've caused, but I need to try. Writing this down is my first step in facing the reality of my actions and taking responsibility for the mess I've made. So that's my story so far. Maybe someone out there can understand what I'm going through, or offer some advice on how to move forward? Thanks for listening, Reddit.